Hey everyone! If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new one. Now, let's get started. The company gala was filled with fake smiles, polished dress shoes, and people pretending to enjoy themselves. It was the kind of place where job titles carried more weight than honesty ever could. I stood quietly near the edge of the room beside my wife, watching her throw her head back in exaggerated laughter at her boss's dull jokes, acting as if I wasn't even standing there. As I reached into my pocket to check my phone, my ID badge slipped free and slid across the smooth marble floor. Her boss casually bent down to pick it up, but the instant he read the name printed on it, everything changed. Every trace of color disappeared from his face. His shoulders sagged and his hands began trembling as though he had touched something burning. He looked up at me, then over at my wife, panic flashing behind the forced smile he struggled to maintain. "Sir," he whispered, his voice barely audible beneath the music, "does your wife have any idea who you really are?" Around us, people continued chatting, laughing, and clinking their glasses, completely unaware of what had just happened. But I noticed every detail. In that single moment, I was reminded of something important. Real power never needs to announce itself. It appears quietly, usually at the exact moment someone's arrogance feels untouchable and their betrayal seems safely hidden. My wife frowned, clearly annoyed by the sudden silence. "What's the problem?" she snapped, rolling her eyes. Her boss immediately straightened his posture. His confidence disappeared, replaced by nervous respect. There was a time when love made me comfortable staying in the background. Then life taught me patience. Without saying a word, I took my badge back from his shaking hands and held his gaze. The laughter around us continued. Drinks were still being poured, and everyone carried on as if nothing had changed. The room remained comfortably blind to the truth, but he knew. He knew exactly who I was. Years earlier, I had built the very company he was now managing. Later, I quietly stepped aside, allowing others to stand in the spotlight while I chose to remain in the shadows. To my wife, I was nothing more than the quiet husband who came home exhausted every evening, spoke very little, and was easy to overlook. He leaned closer again, struggling to steady his voice. "Sir," I had no idea. I gently raised a hand to stop him. "You're not the one who didn't know," I replied calmly. Those words landed with far more weight than any angry shout ever could. Romance may fade with time, but the truth always finds its way into the light. Confusion spread across my wife's face as her boss slowly stepped backward. The confidence he usually carried had vanished, replaced by careful distance and complete respect. She forced a nervous laugh and tried to brush the moment aside with a joke about office politics, hoping everyone would laugh along. No one did. I watched understanding slowly begin to reach her, only to be held back by her own pride. "What is he talking about?" she demanded. Without rushing, I lifted my glass and took a slow sip, enjoying the rare silence surrounding us. Her boss quickly muttered an excuse before walking away, sweat forming across his forehead as he pulled out his phone, clearly calling someone higher up. Quiet whispers followed him as he disappeared into the crowd. The music suddenly sounded louder than before. For years, love had convinced me to protect her reputation, even when doing so came at my own expense. Tonight, I protected nothing. I simply allowed the truth to exist on its own. She grabbed my arm tightly, her fingers digging into my sleeve. "You're humiliating me," she hissed through clenched teeth. I looked at her and offered a small, calm smile. "No," I answered softly. "I've been protecting you for years. This is simply what happens when that protection is gone." Her grip slowly loosened. The irritation on her face faded, replaced by something she hadn't expected to feel: fear. The truth never rushes. It waits patiently until there is nowhere left to hide. She led me toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the music and curious glances. Her voice trembled. caught somewhere between anger and fear. "What did you do?" she demanded. I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time in a long while. There were no excuses left to make and no apologies left to offer. Love had once blurred my judgment, but time had replaced emotion with clarity. I calmly reminded her of the countless late nights she had mocked and the responsibilities she had always dismissed. She had laughed at the long hours, believing I was nothing more than another overworked employee. I never corrected her because keeping peace at home had always mattered more to me than proving who I was. Before she could respond, her boss quietly returned. He stopped a respectful distance behind her, standing straighter than before and refusing to meet her eyes. That was the moment something finally shifted inside her. She realized this wasn't some strange misunderstanding. Something much bigger was happening. Her boss cleared his throat before speaking carefully. "You may want to speak to him a little differently." Her eyes widened and her jaw slowly fell open. The change in his attitude was impossible to ignore. The confidence she had always seen in him had disappeared completely, replaced by the caution of someone who knew exactly who stood before him. I leaned closer and spoke quietly enough that only she could hear. "I never needed your admiration. I only needed your respect." Tears immediately gathered in her eyes, but the moment to change things had already passed. Respect isn't something you rediscover after losing it. Either it exists, or one day you realize it's gone forever. The party continued around us as though nothing had happened. Music still played, conversations carried on, and glasses continued to clink together. But for her, the evening had already ended. For me, the silence inside finally felt real. People who had ignored us earlier were now openly watching. Their carefree expressions had been replaced with curiosity. No one understood exactly what had happened, but everyone could sense that something important had changed. My wife stood completely still, trapped between the image she had spent years protecting and the truth she could no longer avoid. For years, love had made me shield her from the consequences of her own actions. Tonight, I simply stepped aside and allowed those consequences to reach her. Her boss politely announced that he had to leave early. His voice remained calm, but his posture stayed respectful. One by one, others slowly drifted away as well, sensing the tension without fully understanding it. The lively room emptied much faster than anyone expected. Finally, she turned toward me. Her eyes were filled with confusion, regret, and quiet desperation. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked softly. I answered without hesitation, "You never asked." Those 3 words struck harder than any insult ever could. She had enjoyed the comfort, the lifestyle, and everything that came with our marriage, but she had never cared enough to understand the person who made it possible. Without another word, I began walking toward the exit at my own pace. I didn't look back to see whether she would follow. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of her heels rushing across the floor behind me. Outside the venue, tears streamed down her face. She apologized again and again, promising things would change and insisting we could start over. But love doesn't begin again simply because someone suddenly realizes what they've lost. I gave a slow nod. Some chapters end the moment the truth walks through the door. Then I looked at her one last time. "Real power isn't about revenge," I said quietly. "It's about never having to beg for recognition again." Several days later, quiet rumors began spreading through the office hallways she had once walked with complete confidence. Her attitude changed almost overnight. Her voice became softer. Her words became more careful. Her confidence gave way to caution. I noticed every change, but I didn't react. What had once been love had slowly become distance. At the same time, I began returning to the rooms I had quietly stepped away from years earlier. I reclaimed my place without making announcements or demanding attention. Conversations naturally paused whenever I spoke, and important decisions once again began moving in the direction I suggested. From a distance, she watched it all unfold. Little by little, she realized how little she had ever known about the man she had married.